constitutional conservative that represents the 11th district that consists of Bartow, Cherokee County, large part of Cobb County, and part of Fulton County. In 2001, he entered into the public service as being chairman of the Bartow County Republican Party, where he stayed until 2004. In 2004, he ran for representative and remained there until 2010 when he ran for Georgia State Senate, 2011 to 2013. He's been a recipient of the Georgia Wing Legislator of the Year, the National Legislator of the Year by the Civil Air Patrol in 2006 and 2012. He was named as 50 Most Influential Georgians by the James magazine, and also named American Conservative by the Union, receiving the Defender of Liberty Award in 2012 and 13. He was served on numerous committees as a representative and senator of Georgia. But then when he went to Congress, he was assigned to the committees of Homeland Security, Science, Space, and Technology. He's also a lieutenant colonel in the Civil Air Patrol and former commander of the Georgia Legislative Quadrant. He has also written a book, And Then They Prayed. It's about inspirational stories about America. And among all that and everything else, he's a wonderful husband, father, and grandfather. His wife is here today, Desiree. Travis is here today. Travis, stand up. Where's Travis? There's no doubt. This is Travis and Christiana. Christiana is here today, too. Michael could not make it today, and neither could the grandbaby, but most of the family is here. Let's give a big welcome to our 11th District Congressman and our friend, Barry Loudermilk.
Thank you. Before I start, I want to thank Christian School. This totally fits in exactly with what we wanted out of this program today. And I do have a treat for you. My part's going to be very limited. You're going to be treated by Christiana and Travis in several venues. Now, one thing I do want to mention before we get started, because this is an interactive multimedia program, most of the program is going to happen over in this area. So if you're standing there, you may want to work your way over here. Christiana's going to speak from that area. We're also going to be showing a video. But before we do that, I want to thank our sponsors. Thank you so much for making this happen. They don't realize how much I really appreciate being with both of them here today, especially with the Sports Law Group and JD doing the Simple Tax, not just because I've been working with them and helping them in what I can. I really support what they're doing in the Simple Tax, and JD lobbying as hard as he does for the Simple Tax. But the real reason I'm glad they're here, Congress has a 10% approval rating, but lawyers and lobbyists are below us. Right above us is cockroaches, so we're all in we're in the same group together. That's right. Let me just share something really quick with you before I turn the program over to Christiana, and I'll come back up and say a few other things. One, I know there's a lot of things in a lot of people's mind of where we are in America. And I'm going to hang around a little while after if anybody has any specific policy, anything specific you want to ask of what's going on up in that place up north that we'll be going back to next week. And I'll stay around, but today is more about what are we going to do to get our nation back on track. Now, I spent, just recently during the month of August, I spent 10 days in Israel. Of course, we know what's going on with the Iran deal. We were over there working on that, also visiting throughout Israel. Second time I met with Benjamin Netanyahu while we were there. But even beyond that, the thing that impressed me the most, when you think about the nation of Israel, think about the size of Israel. You can fit 3 Israels in the state of Georgia. Yep. It's small. Its narrowest point from the West Bank, which much of it is controlled by Palestinians, which has a significant influence of Hamas and Hezbollah there, as well as Al-Qaeda. They continually have attacks from the West Bank into Israel to where they've had to build a wall around certain communities to just stop suicide bombers from coming in. The distance from the West Bank to the Mediterranean is only 9 miles. If you go up to the north, we stood on a mountaintop in Gaza where you could actually see and hear the fighting going on in Syria. We're right on the Syria border. And while I'm standing there, you can hear the explosions. You can see the flashes of the fighting going on between the Assad regime and other terrorist organizations, all who were committed to the destruction of Israel. Just on that was on the north east side, directly north is Lebanon, who recently attacked Israel. And we also went down to the area of Gaza. Stood along the Gaza Strip, where I'm standing with people who live on the border. And they're showing me a bomb shelter built next to a playground at elementary school. They have less than 4 to 5 seconds when the rockets are fired. Over 17,000 rockets have been fired out of Gaza into Israel in the last couple of years. Hamas controls that area of Gaza, which is technically part of Israel, but Israel has moved all the Jewish people out of there trying to achieve peace, but yet 17,000 rockets fired. They don't even have time to hear the sirens. The children are taught to listen for the whirl of the sound of the rocket motor. They don't even have time to get their bomb shelters. If they are at the playground, they run into the little bomb shelter, otherwise they just lay on the ground. This one farmer told me, he said, when we get 2 to 5 rockets a day, that's normal. You don't even hear about that. But when they get to be 10 to 15 to 20, then we really get concerned. When we send our soldiers, my son's a paratrooper in the Georgia National Guard. When we mobilize our troops, we'll send them, in my son's case, he would go to Dalton to his unit, and they would go to Fort Stewart. They would train up, they would gear up, they get on a military aircraft, they fly into whatever theater they're in, they would gear up, they would train up, and then they would go into action. It could be a month or 2 before they're actually in conflict. In Israel, when a member of the Israeli Defense Force gets called into action, he goes home, puts on his uniform, he or she, and they drive 20 minutes and they're in battle. But with all that said, Israel ranks in the top 5 happiest places to live in the world. The question is why? Why? Well, I realize there's 3 things. And it's something that we once had in this nation that we need to restore. The first thing I realized was we were sitting at lunch in the Gaza area with some IDF soldiers. And the IDF soldier sitting across from us was a young girl. Delilah was about 18 years old, maybe 19 years old. Very young. But as she was talking, I'm thinking, this is not an Israeli accent. So I finally asked her, in my southern drawl, where are you from? She said, I'm from Australia. I said, really? You're from Australia? You're serving in the Israeli Defense Force. Now, all citizens of Israel are mandated they have to serve men 3 years, women 2 years. But she's from Australia. I said, like, did your parents move here? No, my parents don't live here. You've never been here? No, not until I came to serve in the IDF. I'm trying to figure out, okay, a young lady from Australia comes here to serve in the Israeli Defense Force, where you can get, you're getting bombed almost daily. Trying to figure this out, she said, my grandparents are Holocaust survivors. I'm here so that will never happen again. They have a heritage. They know the heritage of their nation, of their people. So I thought, what an incredible story. So we took a picture with Delilah, we put it up on our Instagram or Facebook, whatever, the social media. It was very inspirational. But they decided to have every IDF soldier, there was maybe 30 in the room or so, stand up and say who they were and who they were from. And I'm thinking, I can't wait till they hear Delilah, who's not even from here. So the first guy stands up, and I'm thinking, that's not an Israeli accent. He said, hi, my name is John. I'm from New Jersey. Same story. Birmingham, Alabama, San Diego, California, all across the United States were young men and women who were serving the Israeli Defense Force because of their heritage. Then we got from other countries. There were more in that room from other countries other than Israel. So when you think about it, how important is heritage? It is extremely important to know where you came from. The three things that we have to reinstitute in this nation is being reunited with our heritage, understand what our purpose is. What is our purpose as a nation? They understand it, the survival. I put it in this light when I talk to people. Remember the 4 weeks after 9/11? That's the way America ought to be every day. Full of patriotism and proud to be an American. And you know what? Don't mess with us. That's everyday life in Israel. That's why they're one of the happiest places in the world to live. And finally, the vision. They know where they're going. The one thing I want to say politically today is that's our focus in our office, the vision of where we're going in this nation. You'll hear more about that coming. Today we're focused on that first element, heritage. We can't know where we're going unless we know where we came from, because our founding fathers actually painted a very articulate and clear vision of what this nation should be. We have totally departed from it, but we can get back. So with that, I'm going to turn the program over to my daughter, Christiana, and Christiana is going to share with you a little bit about her story and how we came to be is another part of our life is traveling around the nation, which we've been doing for years, doing programs similar to this, including all-day programs, to reunite Americans with their true heritage. So if you will, welcome my daughter, Christiana Loudermilk.
So I promise this will not be one of those all-day programs, but we are so excited to be here today. You know, looking in this room, what the word that comes to mind, if I describe this room in one word, it would be hope. And it's not just because of the high school students sitting here. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited that you're here. But it's also because of the veterans sitting in the room. It's because of the people who got up to make breakfast this morning because they so believe in this cause. They believe in America. This is a room full of people that believe in America. And that's why I'm excited to be here and talk to you about a 228-year-old document, faded piece of paper. Sounds super exciting, right? But we are excited to talk to you about the Constitution because it is leading up to Constitution Week. This is, to me, it should be a national holiday. I mean, this is kind of an important part of our heritage. But first, before we talk about the Constitution, I get the privilege to share with you two things. I want to share with you a secret, and I want to share with you a story. And it's not just any secret, it's actually a family secret, so that's the best kind, right? Before I do that, I actually want to introduce my family. They've been briefly introduced, but since we're not all here, I wanted to show you the rest of my family. You met my dad, Barry Loudermilk, who is Air Force veteran, former state legislator, former small business owner, and currently serves as our congressman for this district. Pretty proud of him. My mom, Desiree, is here also, and she has been serving alongside him the whole way. And honestly, we call her Commander-in-Chief. She definitely fits that role. We have my older brother, who, self-proclaimed favorite brother, is here today. You'll hear from him. I was really trying to work it to where he wasn't part of this, because we kind of have a sibling rivalry going on, but I've been told by two people today that I was the favorite Loudermilk sibling, so hey, I'm good to go. All right, and then Travis is actually a field representative for a congressman, and he is married to Sarah, who's in the stripes in the picture, and they have a 1-year-old daughter, Emma. Now, we love Emma very, very much, but the only downfall is she did make him all-time favorite child ever, forever, because she was the first grandchild. I'll never actually earn that title, but then we have my younger brother, Michael, who is a workaholic. No, he's a very hard worker, and that's actually where he is today. He's traveling, working. He's in the Army National Guard, and he also works for a cash solutions company in Atlanta. He loves what he does, but he also loves this cause, and you'll actually see him today in the form of a video because he couldn't be left out. So this is my family, and now I'm going to share with you our family secret. While we may look like your typical American family right here, all patriotic and kind of looking normal, we're really different in a lot of ways. We were not entirely typical growing up. Now, we had kind of your typical childhood in a lot of ways. We played baseball on the weekend. We launched model rockets in summer. We had picnics. We did science fairs. We did all those kind of little things. Y'all probably relate to some of that. But we were kind of not typical too. For instance, my brothers and I, I'm sure a lot of y'all have made like home videos, right? Y'all made home videos? Okay. So our form of home video was reenacting the signing of the Declaration of Independence, dressed in colonial attire, videoed on our ginormous VHS tape recorder, and we thought we would become famous as the second signers of the Declaration. It didn't happen, but that was one of our favorite pastimes. Another was my dad telling us stories from military boot camp, and he would dress us up in pieces of his old uniforms, and we would beg him to teach us drill maneuvers around the living room. That's one of my favorite. Love that. Also, we thought, and actually some of y'all probably relate to this pretty well, we thought it was completely normal to be up all night on election eve, putting up yard signs so that your opponent wouldn't have time to come flood the precincts and cover your signs before voting started. That was totally normal. I don't remember an election eve not doing that. And a personal favorite memory that's probably not very typical. It was in 2000. It was the first presidential election that I really remember being old enough to care about. I was 10 years old. And my parents had, picked their favorite presidential nominee, and we were campaigning for, and they were campaigning for them hard. My brothers and I realized, this is really important. Obviously, it's something that they feel like they're dedicating their time to. They're having us go out and wave yard signs. So we decided, all right, we want to make a difference too. So my brothers and I, probably at Travis's lead, gathered up all of the campaign materials that we could find in the house. We took our little camp table out by the mailbox, and we set it up, and we said, you know what, today we are going to influence enough voters to swing this election for our candidate at the end of our cul-de-sac. We sat there for what felt like hours, probably a couple minutes, and we realized we don't get a lot of traffic in this cul-de-sac. We were so excited. We saw a car coming. Didn't matter that it was the mailman. And I kind of surrounded him. We went up and we said, sir, we want to give you some information. And to our dismay, the one person that visited us that day was a diehard Democrat. Still, we wanted to make a difference because my parents taught us from a young age that these pieces of paper, the Declaration of Independence, it doesn't sound very exciting. The Constitution, who really cares? But they taught us that those were important. Now, we were strange in that we understood that the Constitution mattered to all of us, but what I struggled with is when my friends would come and tell me what they did over the weekend, and they'd ask me, so what did you do? And I said, I went to a constitutional seminar. And they're like, what? And, I could tell them, well, because the Constitution, it established our government. It sets the limits on our government. And they looked at me and said, what? And I said, well, Christy, I'm like, okay, why does that matter? I knew why it mattered, but I didn't know how to tell you why it mattered. Because I thought, well, doesn't everybody know that having limited government affects your life very much? Not really, I just want to go play baseball. Like, well, me too, but what I was missing was the big picture. I was missing a picture that I could paint for someone and say, this is why the Constitution matters to you getting to go play baseball. And I was missing that. I understood that it was important, and that's why it wasn't very typical, but I didn't know how to tell you that it was important. Until one day, sitting on my back porch, I got the picture. My dad had been working for years on compiling a book that was talked about earlier, a book that was short stories from American history of how prayer has impacted our nation. And honestly, it was in the editing phases, it was in the proofreading phases, and I avoided it like the plague. I did not want to proofread that book. And it was strange because I love stories. But I loved to hear my dad tell those stories. Because he would put you in Valley Forge in the winter. He would put you in the vacuum of space on the Apollo 8 space mission, and you felt like you were there. And it was so inspired me that I knew there was no way he could write that on a page. And I'm a brutally honest person, so I didn't want to disappoint him and tell him, you just didn't make the cut here. So I just avoided reading it. Until one day I was on my back porch, and the inevitable happened, and my dad walked out carrying a chapter of the book. I was like, oh man. It was the last chapter, and I had no more excuses. So I said, okay, fine. I'll read it. So I sat down, buckled down for a long read. Thought, I'll just do it, it's okay. And I was so inspired. And that chapter, that book, literally changed my life. And it painted the picture that I had been missing. And this is where the story comes in. It goes like this. It was September 11th, 1776. and a group of Continental soldiers were gathered in a small room for a very important meeting. They were under the leadership of Colonel Knowlton. But now, okay, these were not ordinary soldiers. I've heard these soldiers, they were referred to as the Knowlton Rangers, but they've been described as a combination of Chuck Norris and Mel Gibson from The Patriot. Those were the Knowlton Rangers. Pretty hardcore, basically the best of the best. And they were gathered that day. Colonel Knowlton was going to share with them important information from General George Washington. So basically, the Continental Army was flanked on 3 sides at Long Island. And the British forces, they were in danger of being attacked from British ships. The fate of the war rested on what happened at this point. General Washington said, I need to know, I need someone to go behind enemy lines, and I need them to bring me information of the British strengths, their fortifications, their weaknesses. I have to have this information. I need a spy. Now, spies today sound all cool, but back then, spies were actually kind of despised. They were thought as the low people, the deceitful, people with not much character, pretty dishonorable, which is why Colonel Knowlton couldn't just assign someone and say, you're going to go spy behind enemy lines. Because honestly, it ruined your reputation. And if you were caught, it wasn't a matter of if you would die, it was a matter of when you would die. So Colonel Knowlton knew he had to get a volunteer, and that's why the meeting was called. Colonel Knowlton made his plea, and he said, this is so important to our mission. He explained the situation, and the room sat silent. It was a pretty heavy decision. Nobody raised their hand. Until a young man who was kind of stumbling through the door walked in and said, I'll go. Send me in. They were wondering why this young man was even there, because though he was one of Knowlton's Rangers, he wasn't invited to the meeting because he was suffering from a serious case of the flu. But somehow he got word of the meeting, and he walked through the doorway just in time to hear Colonel Knowlton's plea for a volunteer. That young man's name was Nathan Hale. Now, you need to know something about Nathan Hale. All right. Is anyone here 14? I'm not. I'm sure the name. Okay. At 14, Nathan Hale went to Yale University. Yeah, I didn't. He was graduated by 18, and while he was there, he set his sights on teaching. I don't know if anyone here wants to be a teacher. That was what he decided. This was his dream. That's what he wanted to do. He loved teaching other people. He loved getting alongside someone and mentoring them and teaching them. By 18, he had graduated, and it was not long at all before he had attained his first teaching position. He started teaching, realized this is what I want to do. I love this. And soon, because of his ambition, because of his hard work, he was actually offered an interview that he was considered too young for and not qualified for, an interview for a prestigious teaching job in New London. He took the interview, and he so impressed them that they gave him the job on a trial basis and said, if you can prove yourself, we're going to keep you. Of course, he proves himself. And in fact, he was one of the most respected in the town of New London. The leaders of the town just thought he was such an ambitious, such a bright young man, had such a bright future ahead of him, and Nathan Hale had his life made. He had his dream job, and he's 18 years old, his dream job. He's in a bustling town. The town leaders love him. There's even a rumor going around of a budding relationship between him and a young woman. I mean, he had his dream set until he had to answer another call. Because the war for independence was underway, and soon he realized that he couldn't let that call go unanswered. So he joined the militia to give him time to find a new teacher for his position. He was then commissioned as an officer in the Continental Army, and of course, being of the character he was, it didn't stop until he was a member of the best of the best, the Knowlton Rangers. And it was that brought him to that small room that day and said, I'll go. Everyone was astonished, not only because he had the flu, but because of the character of Nathan Hale. A spy was not the job for somebody who had such a bright future, who was thought of, he was referred to as the praying man, because he would get alongside someone who would pray for the sick. He was a man of character, and this was not a job for a spy. One of his best friends, also a fellow officer, said to him, you can't take this will ruin you. But he said, I'll only do what's necessary for my country. So he was sent behind enemy lines, disguised as a school teacher. He obtained information, he took meticulous notes, but he was caught. He was taken to General Howe, the commander of the British forces. He was put on trial. He didn't know that they had discovered the papers that he concealed in his shoe, so he stuck with his story. He didn't cower. He said, I'm a school teacher and I'm seeking work. Soon the papers were shown to him and realizing that his cover was blown. He didn't cower. He didn't surrender. He said, my name is Nathan Hale, a captain in the Continental Army on a mission for General George Washington. And actually General Howe was very impressed. It's recorded that he was impressed by the children. But impressed or not, the fate of a spy was death. And he sentenced him to be hung the next morning, September 22nd. As he was being escorted out of the room from his trial, he turned to the general and he asked for two things. He said he requested that a chaplain be present at his execution and that he be given a Bible to read while he was awaiting his death. Both were refused and he was taken off for his final night alone. Now the next morning, as the officer who was assigned to put Nathan Hale to death was running late, he wouldn't have time to build the normal gallows that you would normally build, so he asked for a rope and he swung it over a nearby apple tree. And he called for Nathan Hale to be brought out. Nathan Hale came out on a beautiful Sunday morning with the town ready to watch his death. And he faced the last steps of his life. And you know, every time I tell this story, I wonder, what would you do if you had 30 steps left in your life? If you were facing your death and you thought, I have 30 steps left. Now, would you plead for mercy? Would you say, God, forgive me for every wrong thing I've done? Would you surrender and say, I'll work for you, I'll work for the enemy, I'll do anything if you would just spare my life? What would you do? I know what Nathan Hale did. He looked straight ahead, he stood proud and confident, and he walked to his death. When he got to the apple tree, the officer of the British forces asked him if he had any final speech or confession. He handed him 2 letters and he asked that they be sent to his brother and his commanding officer. Of course, they never were. So he was brought up the ladder. The noose was tied around his neck. Some of the ladies that were watching this began to cry, and the officer came down the ladder, and the crowd fell silent. The silence was only broken as Nathan Hale said these words. He said, "You are shedding the blood of the innocent. If I had 10,000 lives, I would lay them all down if called to do it in defense of my injured, bleeding country." With those words, the British officer yelled, "Swing the rebel off." Every one of us, whether you are in this room young or old, we've all had dreams, or we all have dreams. Whether it's a job you want to hold, art you want to create, a problem you want to solve, maybe you want to start a business, teach school, raise a family, whatever it is that you want to do, whatever dreams you have, your dreams are only possible because of freedom. It's freedom that opens the doors for us to change the world. Nathan Hale had achieved his dream, but he was willing to walk away from his dream life and give his life so that we could be free to dream. This was the picture that I was missing. The reason the Constitution matters to you, to us, is because the Constitution protects freedom to dream. And that's what Nathan Hale did for us. Now, it was 2011 when I read this story. On my back porch, I was 21 years old, the same age that Nathan Hale was when he gave his life for my freedom. I was pretty excited to tell my dad that he hadn't failed me on this. That year, when my dad published his book, shortly thereafter we formally started a nonprofit named Firm Alliance with the mission of reuniting Americans with our true identity and our true heritage. We wanted to tell the stories of Nathan Hale, of the men and women who have given their lives for freedom, who gave their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to build this nation. We wanted to paint this picture. And it was the next year, and I think it was actually the seed was planted by Joe Dindy. We were approached by the Department of Education in Georgia to make a video about the Constitution to be played in the schools in the state of Georgia. Thought this is pretty exciting. What are we going to tell them? There's a lot in the Constitution. But this answers the question. What you tell them is, it's your Constitution, and it matters to you. We have to paint this picture. So at the risk of being thoroughly embarrassed at my lack of acting abilities and my ridiculous amount of makeup in this video, I want to present to you, it's my Constitution.
I'm Travis, and this is my sister Christina and my brother Michael. We were told we had to talk to you about the Constitution. Wait, hold on. Yeah, I gotta take this. I'll be right back.
Okay, that's Travis. I mean, he's the oldest, and he thinks he's the smartest, and sometimes we wonder. But just to keep peace in the family, we're gonna let him think he's in charge, so just kind of go along with this.
Okay, I'm back.
Hello.
So, laws, government, Constitution, elections, you hear about it all the time. It's on TV, on the radio, in the news, it's everywhere. And now, it's Constitution Week, and you get to hear about it in school. Exciting, right? So, here it is. More than 200 years ago, a couple of grumpy old men wearing wigs and weird pants got together and wrote this faded paper, and they called it their Constitution.
Grumpy man, really? Haven't you ever wondered where the Constitution comes from? I mean, it wasn't always been.
Seriously, did you ever ask what the Constitution really is? I mean, maybe it's important, you know?
And maybe it wasn't just their Constitution. There's a chance that it matters to us too.
Well, actually, I have, and I was about to explain all that.
Go ahead.
Well, as I was saying before the interruption, we could break this down into three questions. Where did the Constitution come from? What is it? And why does it matter to me? So, where did the Constitution come from? Well, it was a small group of men that got together to draft the Constitution. It only took a few days since they all pretty much agreed from the beginning anyway.
Actually, 55 wrote the Constitution, and it was a pretty long process since it took the large and the small states several months to agree.
Whatever. However it happened, the President of the United States signed it, and there it was.
Are you sure the President of the United States signed it? Because there was no such thing.
No.
It was actually the Constitution that established the office of the President.
Yeah, you're right. I was just testing you. So the second question, what is the Constitution? Well, it was the first governing document in the United States.
Nope, it wasn't. What about the Articles of Confederation?
Do y'all want to give this talk?
Yes.
Well, I didn't ask you. So last question, why does the Constitution matter to you? Well, it really doesn't, because you're not an elected official, are you? If you're not in the government, then you don't really know the Constitution, do you?
Okay, so let me tell you the truth about the Constitution. Where did the Constitution really come from? As we were saying, the Constitution was not the first governing document of the United States. The Constitution was written to replace the Articles of Confederation, which had been the governing document for several years. The Articles were not working out so well, so in 1787, a group of men from across the country gathered to revise them. It took over 4 months of heated debate, disagreement, and compromise to write what became our new Constitution. The large states wanted it their way, and the small states theirs. And at one point, some of the small states became so aggravated that they threatened to align with England, who we had just defeated in the Revolutionary War. Eventually, after much discussion, wise counsel, and hard work, they were able to settle on an agreement, and our new Constitution was passed on September 17, 1787. Michael, where's Travis?
Occupied. Don't worry, he knew we could handle it. Next question.
Okay, so now we know the truth about where the Constitution came from. It was written to replace the Articles of Confederation in 1787.
True story. But what exactly is the Constitution? Why was it so important to the people and the states?
According to Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary, a constitution establishes the government of a country. In a free country, it limits the government's power.
So let's break it down. There are three main parts of the Constitution. The preamble states the purpose of our government, the articles establish the structure of our government, and the amendments clarify the limits of our government's power.
The first part of our Constitution is called the preamble. This is where you can find the purpose of our government. The preamble is exciting because not only does it explain the reason that they wrote the Constitution, but it also explains the whole reason that we have a government. In fact, we'll show you. Hey, Travis, we need you to read the preamble.
Not unless Michael unties me.
Okay, just read it.
We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Thanks, Travis.
Michael?
I'll be back.
Okay, the preamble has a lot to it, and it can be a little bit confusing. So let's bring in our dad, Senator Barry Loudermilk, to share his expertise.
Okay.
We're going to make the preamble really simple for a minute so that we can see the true purpose of the Constitution. To do that, we'll first take out all the middle stuff between the commas. We the people of the United States do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Simply put, we took a part of our God-given power and used it to form a government.
Okay, so basically, the entire purpose of the Constitution was for us to start a government. But Dad, I have a question. Why did we form a government and give some of our power away? I mean, don't most of us like making our own decisions?
The answer is in a phrase of the preamble: to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. To secure the blessings of liberty means that the whole purpose of our government is to protect our liberty. Things like the police, the military, and the courts are there to make sure that our liberty is protected. The founders not only wanted a government to protect their liberty, but also to protect your liberty today. So, for ourselves and our posterity simply means the Constitution was important back then, today, and in the future. This is your Constitution. Our government was started by people like you, for you, and to ensure your freedom will always be protected.
So, the preamble shows that the purpose of the Constitution was for us to establish a government, and the entire purpose of the government is to protect our freedoms. Woo! Okay, so I guess I'm going to go check on my brothers real quick.
Okay, well, anyway, the 7 articles make up the second part of the Constitution. The articles explain the structure of our government, or the way our government was built. Here's how it works.
Wait, hold on. I know how it works. I've been studying this. So we the people took a part of our power and used it to start a government, just like the preamble said. Then the articles of the Constitution split that power into 3 separate branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. But what I don't understand is why we split that power into 3 different branches. I mean, wouldn't one branch be easier to deal with?
Seriously.
So yeah, one branch may be easier to deal with, but the men who wrote the Constitution were mostly concerned about making sure this new government didn't have too much control over us, the people. Because of their own experience with England, they knew that to protect our rights, it would be best to split the power of the government between different branches.
In fact, they were very careful to assign each branch specific responsibilities and give each branch specific powers so that no one branch would have complete control over the government.
For instance, the president is given power to command the military, but Congress is given the power to declare war. This means that these 2 branches would have to agree that war was necessary before we send our soldiers to war.
This method of splitting up the power is what we call checks and balances.
So basically, the articles structure our government into 3 branches, and each branch is given a part of the power that we gave the government.
The final part of the Constitution is the amendments. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution are commonly called the Bill of Rights because they list some of the most basic rights of American citizens. Dad, I understand what the Bill of Rights is, but why did they feel it was necessary to list our basic rights? Don't most of us already know what they are?
The Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution to help answer the concerns some states had about how powerful the national government should be. Since this Constitution was not just for these men, but it was to protect the rights of future generations, they wanted to make sure that their beliefs and ideas about this government were clearly understood. The first 10 amendments listed some of the basic rights God gave to all people and specified that the government would always have to protect these rights. The Bill of Rights simply put in writing some of the most important restrictions on the power of the government to make sure that we understood them today.
That makes sense. They were just clarifying for everyone that the government's job is to protect our rights.
So what is the Constitution? It's a document that we wrote to establish the purpose of our government, the structure of our government, and the limits of our government. It's our Constitution.
Well, guys, I'm going to say, you know your stuff.
Yep.
I'll admit those smart guys in wigs wrote a pretty significant Constitution. I mean, they started a government, they explained why 3 branches of government were better than one, and they added amendments at the end to make sure the government didn't try any funny business. But I still want to know, why does all of this matter to me? I mean, I'm not a part of the government.
Well, Travis, it matters to you because it's your Constitution. You say you're not part of the government, but without us, there would be no government. You see, the Constitution was not written by the government to run the people. It was written by the people to run the government.
I never really thought about it that way. So you're saying that the government was started by people like me, and it was for me, but now that the Constitution is written and the government already exists, why does the Constitution matter to me today?
It matters to you today because not only did the Constitution establish our government, it's the rule book for our government. And guess what? It's our job to make sure the government follows the rules that we set for them in the Constitution. If we don't ensure they abide by the rules, then who will?
It's like this. A sports team has a book of rules, right? But it's the referee's job to make sure they follow them or get penalized when they don't. If the referee's not paying attention and the rules are broken, the team's not going to say anything. Have you ever heard of a team called foul on itself? No. In America, we are the referees for the government. It's our job to make sure that the government always follows the rules that we set in the Constitution.
Wow. I guess I never realized that it's my job to make sure the government follows the Constitution. But is it really important that they do follow the Constitution? Does it make a difference to me if they don't?
Travis, we live in the greatest nation in the world, but it's only the greatest because of our freedom. It matters to you that the government follows the Constitution? Because if it doesn't, our freedoms could begin to be taken away. And I don't know about you, but I really enjoy being free and getting to choose how I live my life. If you don't ever want to lose your freedom, then the Constitution matters to you. If you want to honor those who have given their lives earning your freedom, then the Constitution matters to you. Freedom was given to you, but to keep it, you have a job to do. You have to know the Constitution. You have to use the Constitution. And you have to protect the Constitution. This is your Constitution, and it matters to you.
It's my Constitution, and it matters to me.
It's my Constitution, and it matters to me.
It is my Constitution, and it does matter to me.
It's my Constitution, and it matters to me.
It's my Constitution, and it matters to me.
It's your Constitution, and I challenge you to learn as much as you can about it because it matters to you.
So I am Travis, if you haven't gathered that by now. If you haven't, there is more coffee, I think, you can get. Thankfully, you don't have to hear much from me today, but I do want to say Christiana not only outacted us in this video, but she also wrote the whole script. So let's give her another hand. And Michael, my brother, couldn't be here today. He is tied up today. And the other thing about Michael is, in case you couldn't tell, he wasn't wearing makeup that day. It helped a lot. So that's Michael. So I was acting in this video. I was not allowed to grow up not knowing much about the Constitution in the family that I live in. So I was doing my best. We were raised that way to understand how important the Constitution is to us as citizens. And who better to tell you more about that than the guy that was in this video. He's maybe a little older now, but still a pretty smart guy. My dad, Barry Loudermilk.
Again, thank you all for being here, and especially to our kids for doing this. And Joe, where's Joe Dingy? There you are, Joe. Thank you for the vision of doing this. Joe approached us about doing a video that could actually be played in the schools, and when Joe and Dr. Barge approached me about it, about cutting a video, I thought, you want a talking head politician to talk to children from the 2nd grade to high school? So that's when I just turned it over to Christiana. And I said, you guys do this. And so I think they did a tremendous job, and it has played through schools throughout Georgia. In fact, as we mentioned, Travis actually works for another congressman at the time, and they were at an elementary school doing a career day. And apparently they had showed the video because when Travis walked onto the stage, he got an applause from the kids and went up and said, "You're that guy on TV." So he talked about working in a congressional office and took questions, and the first question was, how'd you get untied? So we knew they were paying attention, and so the video is public domain. That was our agreement with Georgia Public Broadcasting, that it would be available for anyone at any time. And that it would not be edited, it would not be changed. Certain words like God would not be removed, and that's why it's in the public domain. And I encourage you to share that with others. If you got the concept, the theme of everything that we've been talking about, it's about freedom. It's about freedom. What has freedom done, not only for America, but what has freedom done for the entire world? Even though the world hasn't been free, America's freedom has had an impact on the entire world. Christiana talked about Nathan Hale, one of the most inspirational stories that is not taught anymore, but a sacrifice for freedom. But because of people like Nathan Hale and others who fought in the Revolutionary War, this vision of our founding fathers was beginning to come to fruition. Now I want to tell you another story, and it's not about another Revolutionary War soldier, even though there was one named Dan Wright. But it's about Dan Wright's grandchildren. You see, they had a vision. It was two brothers. Two brothers who had a vision of accomplishing something that for centuries, engineers and scientists had attempted to accomplish, but was never able to do it. Now here's two brothers, grandchildren of a Revolutionary War soldier, with no formal education beyond their high school years. They were not scientists, they were not engineers. They were bicycle mechanics. In fact, in Dayton, Ohio, they ran a bicycle shop called the Wright Cycle Shop. They self-taught themselves in engineering. What was it that they wanted to accomplish? They wanted to be the first to fly a lighter-than-air aircraft in the history of the world. If you know the story of Orville and Wilbur Wright, they accomplished that. It was a dream that they had. Now here is the only reason they were able to do it was because of the freedom that existed here that had never existed anywhere else in the history of the world. It was because of freedom. Now, they were not the only ones trying to accomplish this. There were other inventors all over the world trying to do what they were doing, but here's two bicycle mechanics that were able to achieve what no one else has ever been able to achieve. The greatest technological advancement in the history of the world by two bicycle mechanics in Dayton, Ohio. Two bicycle mechanics. Did not even graduate from college. Why? Because they had a vision of where they were going, and they let nothing get in their way, and there wasn't a big government to get in their way. In fact, there was someone else who was also trying to accomplish the same thing at the same time. And his name was Langley. Langley Air Force Base is named after him, but the difference was Langley had a government contract and a $50,000 grant from the Smithsonian to do what he was doing. But along with the $50,000 grant and the government contract came the regulations and the stipulations. He actually attempted to fly before the Wright brothers, and what happened? He nearly killed the pilot that was flying his aircraft when it crashed in the Potomac River. The greatest accomplishment in the history of mankind. Now recently, when Christiana came up to Washington, D.C. on one of the visits, occasionally the kids will come up and be there when my wife and I are there, and we try to do something. I mean, all right, I'm the old-fashioned guy. If I'm missing from the office, I'm probably taking a constituent on a personal tour of the Capitol, and I'm showing them the pictures and the paintings, and look, this is where John Quincy Adams actually died. I tell people, I said, we talk about term limits, we got a term limit. And I told this to the Republican conference. I said, when you walk down the halls of the Capitol and you are no longer inspired, you've been here too long. That's when you know your term is up. We went to the Air and Space Museum. And our guide, because we went before hours, a lot of times they'll let some of the congressmen come in. They encourage us to go there, but because of our tight schedules, they'll open up a little early. So we went with Christiana, and we had a curator with us to take us on the tour. And he first took us up to where the original Wright Flyer is on display. And we're standing there looking at the original Wright Flyer. The original parts, except for the canvas that covered the wings. And I'm sitting there inspired thinking, and they're telling the story of how it's just two bicycle mechanics were able to change the history of the world because of the freedom that existed in this country. Now they explained that the canvas, of course, is no longer original because of deterioration and rot. But as we were walking out of that gallery, they pointed to a little plaque on the wall. And there was a little piece of cloth inside the plaque. And they said, that is an actual piece of the original fabric that covered the Wright Flyer that was in the pocket of Neil Armstrong when he stepped foot on the moon. We walked out of that gallery and we walked over to the rail and we looked down at the Apollo 11 capsule that brought Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins back from being the first humans to ever step foot on the moon. The greatest technological advancement in the history of the world, Americans. Why? Because of freedom. I want you to understand something. From then, 1903, when the Wright brothers first took off, the first humans to fly, till we put man on the moon, was 66 years. Nowhere else but America could you accomplish that type of accomplishment and change the history of the entire world than here in the United States of America. Why? Because of freedom. Because of freedom. We've been talking about technological advancements. How many of you are familiar with one of these? Guess what? It's an American invention. You know the power, the processing power, the information that you can contain on this device right here is much greater than in the entire Saturn V rocket system, which was the greatest technological advancement in the history of the world. What you have in your hand right here. Let's just look at it. A telephone. Telephone, American invention. Electric light, American invention. People have been trying to do these things for centuries. Who did it? Americans did it. Internet, an American invention. It wasn't Al Gore who invented it. The camera. Americans perfected the ability of photography. What about a GPS? An American invention. Television, an American invention. If you look at almost every aspect on this smartphone is an American invention. Why? Because of freedom. It was free enterprise that did this. People will argue, no, it was the government that took us to the moon. No, it wasn't. NASA was simply a management organization. It was Lockheed Martin. It was McDonnell Douglas. It was the scientists and the engineers in the free market who had the freedom to think without the restrictions of the government directing everything that they did. It was freedom that took us from Nathan Hale to the Wright brothers to the Apollo 11 mission and to the smartphone today. It's freedom. Now, did you know that America is losing its stature as being the most advanced nation in the history of the world, the most progressive nation when it comes to the free market and moving forward in the economy? Why? Bernie Marcus, the founder of Home Depot, another great American invention, was recently interviewed, and he said, I am very fearful for the direction that we're going. He said because of government regulation, because of the size of the government, and because of the direction that our nation is going. I could not start Home Depot today. It wasn't that he wouldn't. He said, I could not start Home Depot today because we lost vision of what our founding fathers intended. Because we have gotten away from the freedom, letting people be free. You see, our founding fathers had a vision of a nation, a government, unlike any that had ever existed in the history of the world. A government whose focus was on empowering the individual, not a collective. Every other government, in some form or fashion, had focused on giving one group of people more power, more authority, more freedom than they did another group. Whether that was based on religion, whether it was based on race, whether it was based on their last name, as it was in the British aristocracy. Every form of government has always focused on empowering one group more than another, but the founders believed if we empower the individual, if we give the individual the freedom and the liberty to think, to achieve, to worship, to run their own lives, then our nation as a collective will be the greatest that the world has ever seen, and they were right. And if they were right, why would we turn away from what they did? Because our founding fathers understood one thing. The very thing they were trying to achieve was liberty. But they also understood the greatest enemy of what they were trying to achieve was the very thing that they were trying to build. That the greatest enemy to the liberty of the people would be government. If you read the writings of the founding fathers, they feared the very thing that they were trying to achieve. That's why they created a constitution. And I tell students when I speak to them all the time, is the Constitution an empowering document or is it a limiting document? Oh, it's an empowering document. Okay. Can you read me the beginning of the First Amendment? Congress shall make no law. Does that sound restrictive or does that sound empowering? Founding fathers understood they didn't have to endow power to government. Government would naturally find the power, it would seek power, and it would grow power. It had to be constrained. We can make a difference. It's going to be on your backs, this generation here. Our job is going to be to turn the tide, to shift the momentum, but it's taken us a long time to get where we are. It's going to take a long time to get back. That's why I said it's important that we understand the heritage of our nation. We understand the purpose of our nation. We have a vision of where we're going. This is some of the vision. The freedom to achieve. The freedom to live your own life. The freedom to invest your time, your energy, and money in something that not only will advance you, but will advance humankind. When the government grows, those liberties shrink. That's why we have to get back to the ideas, the vision of our founders. And we can only do that if we have a heritage, we have a purpose, which will create the vision of where we're going. I believe we can get there, but it's not going to happen in Washington, D.C. It's going to happen here. 2 final quotes I'll give you and turn it back over to Christian. 1, Politics is downstream from government. James Garfield, President of the United States, our politics is downstream from culture. He said this, you can apply it to any governmental body at all. He was specifically talking about Congress. But you apply it to any elected official. He said, if Congress is reckless, ignorant, and corrupt, it's because the people accept recklessness, ignorance, and corruption.
Amen.
If we're going to change the direction of America, that change begins here, not in Washington, D.C. That change begins here. You must hold your elected officials accountable. You must express what you believe, but your change begins here by changing culture. And the last one is this Constitution is only as good as the honor, the character, and the principles of those that are elected and take the office. Otherwise, it's just words on paper. John Adams said, our Constitution is for religious and moral people and is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. There is a common moral code that our founders lived by, that they understood that superseded anything that government would do. We have to understand that its honor and integrity is the glue that holds the Constitution together. Christine.
I'm pretty proud. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for having us today. And I just wanted to wrap up by saying Nathan Hale did not have 10,000 lives. Even though if he did, he would have given them all for his country. He had one life. But his life changed my life and a whole lot of others. Think of what you can do with your one life and with freedom. On Independence Day, I wrote something that I posted on Facebook, and some of you may have read it. And it is dealing with, obviously, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And I know this is Constitution Week, but I wanted to read this to you in closing because it's really easy today to say, if I was in Nathan Hale's shoes, of course I would have given my life for my country. If I was there at the signing of the Declaration, of course I would have signed it and, signed my life away as a traitor. Of course I would have voted for the Constitution, but I think it's easy to say we would have because we know the outcome. They didn't know the outcome, and they were still willing to sacrifice everything for a shot at freedom, for a shot at our freedom. And I want you, when you leave today, take out your All-American device, and I want you to follow us on social media. You can also find It's My Constitution on our Facebook page. I posted it again today. It's also on our videos portion of the Facebook page. Share that with your Facebook friends. Try to get it played in your schools, not because it's such good acting, but because it is important that we know our Constitution. We also have Instagram, Twitter, Periscope, every other scope and thing that happens on social media. But now I just wanted to read to you in closing something that I wrote, just keeping in mind that we don't know what we would do if we were them, but we can determine what we will do. Had I lived in 1776, would I have supported independence? I talk like I would have, but do I live like it? I wonder if the safety of my family and the danger of the unknown would have been too persuasive. I wonder if everything else would have mattered more to me than the freedom desired. I can wonder, and I can hope, but truth be told, I will never know what I would have done. But I can determine what I will do. I'm resolved that while I live, I will give my all to the cause of freedom. I have one voice, I will speak it. I have one chance, I will give it. I have one life, I will live it for freedom. And just remember, it's your Constitution, and it matters to you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Christiana.